This is a topic I've wanted to tackle for a while because it's something that has people pretty divided whenever it comes up. And as one of the ultimate Kobe Bryant fans who watched basically the entirety of his basketball career, I thought I should give my perspective on it as well. Now, when it comes to Kobe's abilities as an offensive player, there isn't a tremendous amount to be debated. Simply put, he's one of the greatest scorers in NBA history. He's currently 4th on the NBA's all-time scoring list. He has the second greatest scoring performance of all time, which is when he dropped 81 points on the Raptors. And he has the longest streak of 40-point games and 50-point games by anyone not named Wilt Chamberlain. If you ask me personally, I don't think Kobe was the greatest scorer in NBA history, but I do believe he was the most impressive scorer of all time, as no one could consistently make the insanely difficult shots that he could make on a regular basis. To me, this aspect of Kobe's legacy is unwavering, and most people tend to agree that he's one of the greatest scorers of all time. But then, there's the other side of the court, and this is where things get a bit more shaky. If I asked you if Kobe Bryant was one of the greatest defensive players in NBA history, what would your answer be? He certainly has the reputation of being a great defensive player, and in numerous instances, Kobe displayed what he was capable of on that end of the court. To me, the greatest example of Kobe's tenacity and defensive excellence was when he led the Redeem team in the 2008 Summer Olympics. Kobe understood full well that with that stacked roster of offensive superstars, he wouldn't need to be as aggressive offensively, and instead decided to focus his energy on the defensive end of the court. That summer, he accepted the assignment of shutting down the best player on the opposing teams. And Kobe's Olympic teammates have spoken at length about how his mindset and leadership motivated the team defensively, which helped them secure the gold. At least in that time frame, Kobe was absolutely elite defensively, as he demonstrated his lockdown abilities when he set his mind to it. But that begs the question, did Kobe always set his mind on being a lockdown defensive player? Here's something to consider. In the history of the NBA, Kobe is tied for the most first-team all-defensive selections with a total of 9. The players he is tied with are Michael Jordan, Kevin Garnett, and Gary Payton. So based on that, some may consider him on the same level as those other defensive players. Well, the thing is, of the players in that group, Kobe is the only player who never won the Defensive Player of the Year award. Jordan won the award in 1988, Gary Payton won it in 1996, and Kevin Garnett won it in 2008. In fact, Kobe never finished higher than 3rd overall in the DPOY race, and other than that single season in 2000, he never finished higher than 5th. Now, some bring up the point that the all-defensive selections and the DPOY award is all based on voting by the media. So in a sense, there's no objective truth to a player being considered as better or worse based on those awards, because it all comes down to their opinions. While there is some truth to that point, you also have to consider the aspects that are less about opinions and more about the bottom line. For example, defensive statistics. Given how Jordan and Kobe have the same amount of first-team all-defensive selections, and Kobe actually has more defensive selections overall, let's focus a bit on a comparison between these two defensively, seeing how they both play at the same position and with similar styles. Jordan specialized as a defensive pickpocket. He was good at reading defenses and jumping the passing lanes. With his massive hands and with his tremendous strength, he was also very good at stripping the ball from the opposing ball handler. In Jordan's first 9 seasons before his retirement in 1993, he didn't have a single season where he didn't average at least 2 steals per game. In 3 of those seasons, he actually led the league in steals per game. On the other hand, Kobe only had 1 season in his 20-year career where he averaged at least 2 steals per game, and he never once led the league in that category. Despite the fact that Kobe played 5 more seasons and nearly 300 more games in his career, Jordan actually leads Bryant on the all-time steals list by nearly 600 steals. To put it simply, when it comes to forcing turnovers and stripping the ball from the opponent, MJ was on another level entirely. So let's look at another aspect of defense, blocking shots. Earlier in Kobe's career was when he was at his best as a shot blocker. which makes sense since his explosiveness and his vertical leap was at its greatest during his Froby days. With that being said, Kobe only had one season in his entire NBA career where he averaged at least 1 block per game, and that was a lockout-shortened season in 1999. On the other hand, Jordan had 4 seasons where he averaged at least 1 block per game, getting as high as 1.6 in 1988, which is actually the highest blocks per game average by a guard in NBA history. Along with that, MJ also had a higher career average than Kobe as well. There are other stats that should factor into this comparison as well, like advanced stats, and one of the examples of that is defensive win shares. At Kobe's best in the year 2000, he had a grand total of 4.5 defensive win shares over the course of that season. On the other hand, Jordan exceeded that total in 9 different seasons of his career, getting as high as 6.2 in 1996. Now listen, clearly all of these defensive stats are in favor of MJ. And I'm not bringing these up in an attempt to slander Kobe by any means, as he was at the very least a very good defensive player, but I'm simply pointing out that there's layers to this thing. Now with all of these stats mentioned, some might want to point out that defensive statistics aren't always the best metric to understand the greatness of a defensive player. And you know what? That's a decent point. For example, Dennis Rodman is widely recognized as one of the greatest players of all time by pretty much everyone. Yet Rodman was nothing terribly impressive from a statistical standpoint, as he never had one season where he averaged at least 1 steal or 1 block in the entirety of his NBA career. Some of you may be wondering, if that's the case, what makes him a great defensive player? Well, that would be his skill that doesn't show up on the stat sheet, which is his smothering on-ball defense. A defender can be all over the offensive player and be consistently forcing him into making bad passes and taking bad shots. And for the most part, this wonderful defensive quality will not show up on the stat sheet. So with that in mind, let's revisit the comparison and evaluate how good Kobe was as an on-ball defender. A lot of this relies on personal experience and the eye test. From my observations, Kobe was a much better on-ball defender earlier in his career, as he began conserving some of his energy as he got later into his career. I also believe that Kobe was what I call a situational defender. The Mamba was the kind of elite defensive player who would pick his spots, based on the gravity of the moment, who he's up against, and what he's trying to prove. I don't think it will come as a surprise to anyone when I say that Kobe didn't always have the same intensity defensively as he had in the 2008 Summer Olympics. That's because he picks his spots, and that was a spot he picked. Obviously, we've all seen the highlights of Kobe putting the clamps on guys like Dwayne Wade and Kyrie Irving, and in large part, that was because Kobe accepted the challenge of a one-on-one superstar matchup. That was a spot he picked. But as a longtime Lakers fan, I also remember many instances where Kobe got a little lazy on defense and maybe relied a little too heavily on guys like Andrew Bynum to contest his cutting man at the rim. Although Kobe was capable of being the best defender on the court at any time, I also don't remember him bringing his best effort as consistently as guys like Jordan and Rodman. Don't just take it from me though, take it from his championship head coach, Phil Jackson. In his book called The Last Season, which was about the 2004 Lakers, the Zen Master had this to say about the Mamba. Kobe's defense, to be accurate, has faltered in recent years, despite his presence on the league's all-defensive team. The voters have been seduced by his remarkable athleticism and spectacular steals, but he hasn't played sound, fundamental defense. Mesmerized by the ball, he gambles too frequently, putting us out of position, forcing rotations that leave a man wide open, and doesn't keep his feet on the ground. This was Phil's honest perspective after the team imploded with their finals loss in 2004. Since Jackson was then retired at that point, that was probably the most genuine response we could have got from him. That was far from the last time that Phil would comment on Kobe's defensive abilities. And around the year 2010, Phil said that Kobe started winning some of his defensive selections based off of his tenacious reputation and not so much of his actual play on the court. Now, it's no secret that Phil liked to play mind games with his players, and it's possible that he was saying this as a way of motivating his star player to step up his game. Now, whether or not that was the case, I kind of agree with Phil's assessment. Although Kobe made a total of 12 all-defense teams, a total of 9 or 10 probably would have been more accurate, as it appeared clear to me that he had become vastly more selective about giving his best defensive efforts. So at the end of the day, where do I stand on Kobe's defensive abilities? Well, like I said before, he was a top defensive player who was capable of being the best defender on the court any given night, and many times he was. The problem with his defense, according to Phil Jackson and myself, is that Kobe wasn't as consistent as other great defenders, and he didn't have the longevity in that area either. In my own words, I would say that Kobe was a very, very good defensive player, but unlike some other Kobe fans, I think it's a step too far to say that he was one of the greatest defensive players of all time. So what do you guys think? How good of a defender was Kobe Bryant in your own words? I look forward to hearing your thoughts in the comment section below. Thanks for watching as always, make sure to like and subscribe for more basketball content, and I'll see you guys in the next video.